welcome to Finally Game Music with me, your host, Kristoffer Schenström, and this is episode 137, and the thematic of this week is going to be games from the 1988, the year I was born. So we're going to listen to a little bit of music from the year I was born, basically. So what kind of music could I come up with? And I've handpicked 4 different tunes from different consoles. Actually, it's going to be amazing to listen through these all, and you will hear my thoughts and minds on these tunes, and also, as per usual, we're going to look into these different composers as well. Some of these guys we might know, some of these we might not have heard of as much. So it's going to be super interesting digging into these games this week. And the first one out this week is the game Chrono Quest, and this one is a little bit special one because I don't think many have heard of this game before. I haven't for sure. But we're going to listen to the background music number 6 from Chrono Quest as the first song for this week. And this was the first track out of this week. This is the background music number 6 from the game Chrono Quest. And as you might have guessed, some of you at least, this is from the Amiga. And yeah, when it comes to this soundtrack, it was created by the legendary British composer David, not Wise, but David Whittaker. And the game, it was developed by the French studio SARL Infomedia, or just Infomedia for short. That usually is the name we usually see, but it's spelled out SARL. I don't actually know what that stands for, but we're going with it. We're rolling with the punches here. But the original title for this game were actually Explora Time Run, and this was actually the original name back in France where the game was developed. When I actually saw this game, I saw the front cover of it, and I was actually interested because it looks so freaking amazing, and when I saw the logo of Psygnosis as well, I even got super interested in it. But apparently Psygnosis was only the publisher in Great Britain for this game, or in UK, so to speak. So Chrono Quest was released back in 1988 and was released only for the Amiga and the Atari ST here in Europe. And when it comes to David, the composer here, he is a man of many skills. And first of all, he has been working with video game music ever since 1984, where his first video game music were for the Star Wars game that was initially released for the arcade back in 1983. We can also see that David is credited for the ZX Spectrum and the C64 version for the Star Wars game. So he didn't work on the initial release for the arcade, but for the ZX Spectrum and the C64. And since David has been such a blast as a composer and does have a lot of other games on his CV, I will actually write him down for a future composer episode. But just to give something extra to it so we don't just stop there, his last work that he actually has worked on was to be a composer for the Lego Ninjago movie video game that was released back in 2017. But yeah, looking at this game, the Chrono Quest is a French-developed, but it is in English, thankfully. But it is a point-and-click adventure, and I didn't really grasp that much of it, but it looked really beautiful when you're looking at it from like a retro perspective kind of way. Not my type of game, but I did enjoy the music from this game. It has a lot of different background music going on. And just listening to this one, the background music number 6, it actually gave me a lot of reference back to what I think kind of defines the Amiga music. It also reminds me a little bit of the demo scene, so I really did enjoy this one. It actually was one of my favorites from the soundtrack. And when I picked tracks for this week, I actually wanted to have a little more uplifting ones, but I also wanted to bring it down a little bit as well. And looking for this specific song or music or tune or... yeah, I'm delaying here. But looking at this one specifically, I think this was one that kind of brings it down a little bit, but I really did enjoy this one, and that is not usually me sometimes, but I always find some of these golden small bits that I really do enjoy. And for you guys who've been following me for quite some time, you do know I really do enjoy these songs that are more uplifting and have more adrenaline to it. So this one is a little bit specific and special to me, I would say. The second one is going to be, of course, uplifting. We're talking about Power Strike, or also called Alest, and we're going to listen to the song The Solitude. The Solitude from the game Power Strike, also called Alest, and depending on which region you were in and which name you had, I'm going to go into that specific one a little bit later. But first of all, the soundtrack here was composed by the Japanese Masatomo Miyamoto and Takashi Santo. The studio behind the game is the Japanese company Compile. And the game, it was first released in Japan during 1988, and then both on the MSX, but also the Sega Master System. The song we heard, this one's The Solitude here, was from the Sega Master System version. And in Japan, the game was actually released as Alest. I think most of us in Europe are also remembering this as Alest, mostly. From my experience, we do remember it as Alest. But the game was also released in the US in December the same year, 1988. But in the US, the game is called Power Strike. The game did also get a release in 2004, and this was a mobile release for the J2ME, which is a Java-based kind of device. I've never heard about these myself. I recently just started to hear about like Windows phones, and I was like, what the hell is that? I have no idea what that is. But apparently it's a Windows phone with Windows OS. I usually just know about Android and Apple nowadays, and I'm happy with that. But this mobile release, anywho, was actually released in Europe exclusively, and the game also had a version released for the Wii back in 2008, but that was a port of the MSX version and was only released in Japan. Looking at the composers here, the Masamoto started out with video game music back in 1985 as an in-house composer for Compile. And his first game at Compile were actually the game Lunar Pool, like a futuristic pool kind of game, kind of looks like it. I don't know, I didn't actually look into specific with with gameplay footage and everything. It just looked like a pool game when I looked at it. But looking at his list of different soundtracks here, we can see that actually a couple of the soundtracks that he's worked on is connected to Alest. But for us in Europe, I do believe most of us know his work through the NES game The Guardian Legend, which also released back in 1988, or the Sega Master System game Golvelnius Valley of Doom, which got released the year earlier, 1987. And the last work he did was actually for the game Cyber Knight, which was a game that got released back in 1990. So he didn't work that long within video game music, and I'm a little bit unsure what he is working on today. But yeah, 1990 was the last one that he did. Cyber Knight was also a Compile game, so that's why he is and was working as an in-house composer specifically for Compile. Looking at the other composer here, Takashi, he is another kind of a story here. He has only worked at Compile for a short while and started out as a composer on this second game that I named for Masamoto, the Galvanius Valley of Dune, back in 1987. And he is only credited in 6 games as a composer, but he did continue his work within the game development. But instead of being a composer, he worked as a producer and a programmer. And the latest work he did as a composer was for the game Override that got a release back in 1991. So yeah, these guys are like old foxes. One of them kind of disappeared and went out of the video game music, while the other one kind of transcended instead to start working with programming and producing. And he's done a lot of more producing than the programming part, and especially more programming than the composing part. But that was really interesting, and as I said before, this is the Solitude song we listened to this time was from the Sega Master System, so it's an 8-bit. And usually when it comes to Sega and their consoles, I usually find the music kind of screaming in your ears and kind of high-pitched usually. But when it came to this music, and I do know that the LS games have an amazing soundtracks. I've listened to these tracks a lot of times. But I kind of wanted to bring forth Solitude because most of the song, I don't know why, but it really reminds me of Nintendo music to some extent. And I really do enjoy it. This song could basically just be in like a Airman stage for Mega Man, for example. I really like the enthusiastic kind of adrenaline in this song. So looking at it, I really did enjoy it from start to finish. It has this thematic, and unless there's also a shoot 'em up game, so you do have this adrenaline going on with all the bullets flying around you and everything trying to kill you all the time. But I really did enjoy this one. I actually listened to this one over and over again so many times before actually picking it, because I kind of got stuck in. I really did enjoy the melody. So yeah, and I really do hope you guys enjoyed it too. But we're pulling this down a little bit. But this next song is going to be a little bit special as well. We're having a lot of more special tunes coming up for this episode, and I'm actually excited for these guys as well, and to inform you guys about the research that I did and information I found. But the next game we're going to listen to is for the RPG game. They kind of define a genre to some extent, but we're going to listen to the soundtrack or the song Bring Around Ballad from the game The Bard's Tale 3, Thief of Fate. Now we're going a little bit more down to earth here. The Bard's Tale 3, Thief of Fate, and Bring Around Ballad. And yeah, this one is a little bit special one, but we're digging into that in just a couple of seconds here. The soundtrack here was composed by the American Kurt Hayden, and the game was developed by the American studio Interplay Entertainment. The game, it has its release on the C64 and Apple II back in 1988, and that was released in the US and in Australia. The game, it also got a DOS ported version back in 1990, and the Amiga for 1991, and lastly a release for the PC-98 back in 1992, and that last one was an exclusive release in Japan. So looking at this game, this is some sort of... It kind of looks and plays like the old Shadowgate. It's like a point-and-click type of adventure where you play like a band of adventurers roaming through the world, saving the world, basically yada yada. basic fantasy stuff going on. And when it comes to this song, this is actually one of the tunes that the bard in the game can play. I'm a little bit unsure about the bard. Is that a playable character you can play, or is that a person you basically go and say hi to, and he plays like a tune around the fires or so? I'm a little bit unsure about that part, because myself, I haven't actually played any of the Bard's Tales games, but reading it through and from what I've heard from a couple of friends and such, I've heard good things about the Bard's Tale, but I don't think it will be something I play today. It really looks like shit when I'm taking a look at it today. I think it's more for the people who actually play the game back in the day, who can be nostalgic about this thing. Maybe it had an amazing type of adventure and storyline that you followed through. And looking at this game, you kind of have all the information about the characters down below, and that's like specific look that kind of gives it like you're playing a Dungeons and Dragons game. You have armor class and stuff like that. You have information up in the right corner, and up in the left corner is just a square frame that shows enemies and how you're walking around, and it looks so freaking boring. But I kind of do enjoy the music. And looking at the tune we just listened to, this was the Commodore 64 version of the song. And as I said, they had a multiple kind of releases. I actually found like rework songs as well, like covers, maybe remixes to some extent. So that was interesting as well, but I really did enjoy this kind of string kind of thing going on with this ballad. It is nice, and we're going to dig in a little bit deeper of what is actually going on with the song as well. So looking at the composer first here, he had a good run within the video game music, starting out with Battle Chess. While not working on specifically any sound or music there, he actually just worked for the sound effects, and this was back in 1988, and that followed up with The Bard's Tale, and most likely this was working like a parallel thing with the production. Because, as I just said, Bard's Tale was also released back in 1988. And one thing that actually was interesting when it comes to the Bard's Tale 3, I actually found information making a couple of references to the Monty Python, The Quest for the Holy Grail. And looking at it, one of the tunes is actually the Sir Robin's tune within the game, which is an interpretation from the movie's Sir Robin's tune. I was like mind blown when I actually looked up Sir Robin's tune from this game. It sounds so alike, but he kind of covers it up and does his own thing with it. But you can clearly hear the Sir Robin tune from the Monty Python and the Quest for the Holy Grail theme that they use. But looking a little bit closer, we're dragging it back to Kurt here, we can actually note that he was actually the composer for the PC and Mac version of Monty Python and the Quest for the Holy Grail video game that was released back in 1996, which is a really fun kind of reference back to it. We have a game that actually references the video and the movie of Monty Python, The Quest for the Holy Grail, and then he actually gets the chance to do the music for the video game interpretation of the movie. But there is also another reference within the game with Monty Python's monk chanting scene, Bring Out Your Dead, if you do remember that one. So that was really specific, and it was like super fun just to read through there. There seems to be a couple of more hidden references to different this and that, and I'm not gonna go and spoil everything if in case people are interested in finding these things. But looking just at the game, this is kind of information you find quite fast, so it was easy to kind of dig these ones up. But because I'm a huge fan of Monty Python, and I really do enjoy The Quest for the Holy Grail. It's a super hilarious movie, and I do enjoy it a lot, especially that holy hand grenade scene with the crazy rabbit. And for people who don't know, go watch the movie. For people who do know, haha, love it. But looking ahead here on Kurt, we can actually see that he worked on the Disney's The Hunchback of Notre Dame, 5 topsy-turvy games that got released back in 1996. And this is actually a game I played a whole lot. I didn't like the Disney movie that much, but I did enjoy the smaller games that this game came with. So it was just crazy. It was like bowling, like a breakout game and such. It's like small mini games basically in a big giant game. And there were a lot of different kind of Disney games that got released with this. Well, not a lot, but a couple of them at least. I know Lion King had one as well with Timon and Pumbaa, for example. And after that one, he worked on Ace Ventura, that also got released the same year. Return to Krondor in 1998. I'm jumping a couple of titles here as well, but he doesn't have too many titles within his CV either, but it's kind of too long to go through each and every one. And for the last one here, we're getting closer to the end of his composition era, so to speak. But back in 2018, Kurt returns to do some composition for the Bard's Tale trilogy release, and also follows up with the Bard's Tale 4 Barrows Deep that also gets released in 2018. But after that, he leaves composing on the shelf to become a senior product communications manager at the audio company Bose, and that's basically where he is right now. And the last song I have for this week is from the game Cabal. And this is also a very special one. I have actually not played this game, but this game goes under a genre that I really do enjoy. So we're going to listen to Boss Battle 4 from the game Cabal. And this was the last tune of the week. This was Boss Battle 4 from the game Cabal, and this was the NES version. And the specific soundtrack for the NES version was composed by the British composer you most likely have heard of, everybody by this stage, David Wise. And I just to kind of fill in with something else here, when listening to this song, it's like, why do I recall this to some extent? And then I saw David Wise's name, that he worked on the music for the NES version. Doesn't this sound a whole lot the Battletoads to some extent? I don't know about you guys, but if you do agree with me, please comment and say I'm not crazy. Please. Because I don't know why. This could fit very well within a Battletoads game. I don't know why. I just get the feeling that this one is really good, is a really great song, and the composition kind of reminds me whole lot of Battletoads. So it just feel like just push it in there and it will be fine. Don't worry. The Battletoads will just kick ass anyway. Anywho, whew. When it comes to this game, it was developed by the Japanese studio TAD Corporation. Cabal was initially released on the arcade back in 1988, and this one was only released in Japan. I didn't pick the specific soundtrack from the arcade because the soundtrack is really weird, and it kind of just fills up like more of an ambiance to it, and it's really, really repetitive as well. So when it comes to the newer versions that got ported from the arcade, oh wait, maybe I'll just go through this list. So in the following year, back in 1989, the game was ported to a multiple amount of home PCs. We have the Amiga, the Amstrad CPC, and then the Atari ST, C64, ZX Spectrum, and DOS. The game was also lastly released for the NES, and this happened back in 1990. So the song per se is kind of cheating, I would say, because it wasn't released in 1988, but it is kind of a version of the version that we hear in the original arcade version that got released. So listening through the whole soundtrack here and from the different platforms, we can actually see that it does use a little bit different of the soundtracks from each and every platform, but the core is still there, but there are some slight changes. And looking at the arcade, it's kind of hard to find a composer. Most likely this could be like just because it's more of an ambiance, as I just said before. It could be the reason why they didn't actually really have a composer for the arcade version, because looking at the uncredited list, because there are no credit lists within the arcade version, but there are only 2 people that are, as we found out, credited to this game. And one of them is the president for the TAD Cooperation, Tadashi Yokoyama, and then the other guy is just the sole programmer of the game, which was Tasukaza Aoki. So I don't really have that much to go on, and back in 1988, it's most likely one of those time periods, just as all those composers back in the day, that it was really hard writing up people within the credit screens because other companies would just headhunt them, and that is most likely the case for this game as well. But I really do enjoy the soundtrack, especially for the newer versions, for the home PCs and for the NES. And when it comes to Cabal, it basically set a new kind of genre here called the cable shooter or Cabal shooters. And this is a genre that I really do enjoy, but I'm really bad at finding these type of games. One of my favorite ones when I grew up, some of you guys already know this one, was Wild Guns. Wild Guns is a straight-up Wild West sci-fi cable shooter-esque. I've never played the original Cabal for the NES, but it just has more of the stuff going on at just the gameplay of it, and I really do enjoy. I really need to find and play more of these type of games because I really do enjoy them from start to finish, and I don't care how many times I die. I really do enjoy this type of genre. It's filled with action. It's fun to kind of destroy everything going around, and my references from Wild Guns and looking at gameplay of Cabal really takes it and knocks it out of the park, because in Cabal you're basically destroying everything, and the animation of you winning a level is just super amazing. Your character is going around waving and flailing his arms and legs like super happy, and they kind of just like he's walking forward. He's like super happy, waving and flailing and walking forward into the screen. And when it gets into the smallest points, it's kind of like he's doing like a happy jump, and it's just so silly for some reason. It looks super serious, and then it just gets super silly between each and every level. And I think that's why it's super funny, and just kind of bringing forth that, hey, it's just a game, it's nothing serious. Of course we have the thematic of killing soldiers and stuff like that, but it's just a game in the end, and that's why we're having fun, and I really do enjoy that kind of aspect of it. And from there we're heading back to David Wise here, and looking at the games he did, there's a lot of it, and we have been talking and touching on David Wise multiple times. So looking at David Wise, since the last time we talked about him, he has actually released music for one more game, and this was the 2020 release of the new Battletoads game. So yeah, and that one looks so freaking good. I haven't actually played it myself yet, but I am actually interested in it. But at the same time, we have a new Turtles game coming in at one point, the Shredder's Revenge, and I'm looking so freaking forward to that one. Because damn, I really love beat-em-up games with Turtles. Because damn, it just looks fantastic. But yeah, these were 4 tunes that I picked. Every tune had its own console, so we got a kind of unique soundscape going on listening to these. I added some of my own like versions of what I thought about the music at least. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. Because I really did. I think the one I enjoyed the most was actually the research I did for the Bring Around ballad for the Bard's Tale 3 there. I really did enjoy that one, and it actually had me laughing. I just needed to kind of continue to look at gameplay and stuff like that just to get a better glimpse of what's going on. I really, really enjoyed it. But other episodes from Finally Game Music, you'll find those on our homepage at videospelsklubben.se, Spotify, or in your closest podcast app. You can feel free basically to follow and comment on one of our social medias. I have a Facebook page and an Instagram page, so just search for Finally Game Music and you'll find that one. And just giving it a follow helps us a lot to reach out to new people and stuff like that, and that is super sweet as well. Getting more people to talk about game music and enjoy it together. Other than that, if you would like to hear your name within one of these episodes, feel free to request a song for an upcoming episode by commenting on any of the social pages or visiting the Videospelsklubben.se's Discord, and you'll find all that information at the homepage. You can also support this podcast for future content, quality upgrades, but most important of all, in the end, when I don't need money, everything that kind of goes above what I need, like buying the music and upgrading the hardware I'm basically using to get more quality, then we're going to support future composers, and you can help that out, me, and help them out in the end by becoming a Patreon. And the current awesome Patreon backers that we have today is Mikael Sjöberg, Andreas Nilsson, and Daniel Onemark. So thank you so freaking much for supporting this podcast and helping me out financially, because you guys, you are amazing. And well, since the games are so old, it's actually really hard finding where we can buy and support the music, because I didn't really find that much music to buy myself. So most of these tunes were actually ripped off from the games, and some on YouTube. That's basically how I usually get around. I always try to support all the composers by buying their music. Because it is really important giving back. They're giving us this amazing soundscape from each and every corner of the world, and the least thing we can do is pay back. Buy the soundtracks, buy specific tunes that you like, and well, support artists basically. And yeah, there weren't any specific ones I found, so sadly there won't be any links, so to speak. I'm actually losing my train of thought right here, so as you might hear, I'm not having the usual flow at the end. And coming up with this week, I'm actually going to be super busy with events and such, so I will actually be doing a Warp Zone episode again. So this will be the Warp Zone number 5, and if you guys have any game that you just want to point out, hey, I'm playing this game, talk about it. Maybe I have played it and can talk about it, or maybe if you just want to add a smaller comment on the game you're playing, what you think of it, feel free to do so. So basically anything goes through these Warp Zone, and usually I talk about the games that I usually play or recently have played. But other than that, thank you so much everybody for listening to this week's episode of Finally Game Music. Do take care, and see you all guys next time.